Is, and there's never been a time where those efficiency gains are worth more
Yeah.
than they're worth today. Trucks are more expensive
Yeah.
than they've ever been. It's in the years I've been in the business. Drivers obviously are commanding, rightfully so, uh, great wages. It's just saving a little bit of time
Yeah.
per day, per unit, or per shift is more meaningful now than ever. If not now, when, right?
Thanks for taking some time to chat with me.
You're welcome.
Would love to know more about Moffitt's story. We will start there. How was Moffitt founded? And over time, how has it changed? And
Sure. Like most businesses, there's a story. This one happens to be a long one, but to abbreviate, so the Moffitt brand has been around since 1947. You have to go back 3 generations back of my business partner, Rusty Moffitt, and 2 generations back of his father, my other business partner, Roy Moffitt. And they were just a small local fuel distributor. That family business was sold back in 2011. Rusty, being the youngest son, when his non-compete was up, he wanted to get back in the space. And he reached out to me. My family had been in the fuel business back in the 70s and 80s.
oh wow,
And so I knew the business. We'd known each other for a long time, and we started this iteration of Moffitt Services.
that's very interesting. I didn't know your family was also in the fuel business. So tell me more about that.
Yes, my stepfather was a wholesale distributor. He owned a company called H&A Petroleum, a Houston-based company. He also had a chain of convenience stores, independent stores. I think at largest there were 17 convenience stores. So I cut my teeth and grew up working behind a register, stocking shelves, and working in the wholesale fuel business. All that prior to college.
Nice. So you grew up watching and learning the fuel business, and then now you're doing Moffitt 2.0. What
Yes.
does Moffitt 2.0 look like, and what did you guys think? Well, when you went back at it, you probably had a thesis like, this time we're going to do something different. What was that?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it looks very different than the retail business
I see.
that my family was in, meaning we don't service C-stores. Our fuel is not consumed by the motoring public. We are strictly commercial, industrial, oil and gas users, rental companies. But one of the things we knew is we wanted to really focus on those market segments where service is valuable, meaning where the cost of failure or the cost of running out of fuel or the cost of slowing down a project was really high, because we thought we could create additional value there, and I think that's proven true. And so that's really what we focus on, are those customers that just cannot afford downtime.
Right. Nice. So really being part of where the fuel availability is very critical part of their operation, right? And downtime is actually very impactful to the business. So what kind of business lines? I know there's a lot of different business lines you're operating in. So what are different business lines, and how did these start? Like, how did you build those up over a period of time?
Yeah, good questions. Obviously, started with fuel. We started with a very small and a lubricants operation from the start, primarily just because you have to, right? Any customer that burns fuel also is a consumer of lubricant products. Over time, we saw that lubricants business really grow, obviously, as gallons grew on the fuel side, gallons grew on the lubricant side. What you might not expect, though, is we also developed a brokerage business, because we would get calls from customers that might be moving into a remote area to go do a construction project that's maybe a 6-month project, and they don't want to go out and try to find a local fuel supplier in another state or another region in Texas. And so we created the brokerage business largely for that. And today, that's one of the faster growing segments of our business. We now have a footprint almost in all 50 states.
Oh, wow.
Not quite, but that business has grown. And then the last piece is our disaster response. Sometimes we refer to it as our storm business. So when natural disasters occur, whether it's hurricanes, floods, ice storms, pipeline ruptures, whatever the case may be, we have a group headed up by one of my business partners, Rusty Moffitt. We mobilize with the companies that go and handle those projects, the restoration contractors and general contractors that do that kind of work. That's also a very kind of mission critical business. When you're keeping first responders, medical facilities running on generator power, letting that generator run out of fuel simply is not an option.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think very diverse business lines, but comes back to the theme where fuel is very critical. You need it now and you can't have downtime. So very interesting sort of broad theme around which you build like different business lines.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the brokerage business a little bit. So what are some nuances you're seeing? So there's obviously like Mansfield, which does brokerage, I think. There's a few other kind of players. How are you thinking about a modern day brokerage? What does that look like? And what are some interesting things you're testing or doing? And what do you see like where the industry is headed on the brokerage side?
Yeah, so let's start with, first and foremost, we never anticipated the brokerage piece of our business to grow at the rate it has. It's actually, on a percentage basis, it's the fastest growing segment of our company. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. One is, I think as the supply chain has become challenging, more and more customers are just not able to or willing to rely on one provider. And when something goes awry, they're looking, and we get those calls. I think part of our mission is we're not necessarily tied to one vendor. In some regions, we have great partnerships with local distributors, and that they get the job done every time. But in other areas, we might have 2 or 3 partners, and if one is not capable of getting the delivery made on the time scale that the customer needs it, we have 2 more to go to, right? We're also applying technology such as fluid level monitors, making sure that the right size tanks for the right runtime is in place, just to minimize that chance of failure.
Yeah, and it really feels like this Uber kind of model where, you know, how Uber would take a ride and they'll take that ride and then broadcast it to all the drivers in the location or whoever is available, and then really make sure that entire ride goes well. And then there's all these things built around validation and verification and reviews and who's doing a good job, and then using that knowledge to provide better rides, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the one thing I would point out is in our model, we own that transaction. And what I mean by that, if you call our brokerage desk, when we tell you we're going to get the fuel delivered, we're going to get it delivered, and we're going to pay the bill to the local vendor. We're going to bill you. We're going to take responsibility for it, even if we have to go to 2 or 3 or 4 sources to get it done on your timetable.
So you're owning that entire transaction.
We are.
You're making sure you're collecting money, and you're negotiating the contract possibly with these guys.
Providing the credit as well. In many cases, our customers don't want to go negotiate a new credit line or set up a new account because they're only going to be there 6 months on a project. So we circumvent all of that.
I see. So it's like a full stack operation for them. It's one click, get credit, the entire transaction support, plus the dispatch and delivery.
Correct.
And then settle the entire payments of it.
That's correct.
It's very awesome. And then let's talk about the disaster recovery business line, because that operation is pretty intense, right? And a lot of stuff is last moment. We don't know when the disaster is going to strike, but we got to be ready, right? So how do you like prepare for that? There's a lot of true firefighting and like the team coming together for 15, 20 hours of work at a time. Tell us more about how does that work?
Yeah, we could talk for hours on this subject. So first and foremost, my 2 business partners really brought all the subject matter expertise around this topic and the relationships. So first, we don't just mobilize to a disaster affected region and put a sign up and say, here we are. We mobilize there with customers that we have deep relationships with, that when they mobilize, we mobilize with them. These are the restoration companies, the equipment rental companies, people that are hauling equipment that requires fuel to operate. So their equipment obviously is no good without the fuel to operate. There's a lot involved. Some of the things you don't think about is typically in the early stages, you need to arrive before the event, right?
Yes.
Because you need to top off, and then you get your crew out of the region where the storm is anticipated. You let the storm come through, and then you mobilize back in then to start the recovery effort. And so in the early stages, there's often no food, there's no electricity,
Oh, wow.
there's often no cell phone
Yeah.
signal or very limited cell
Yeah.
phone signal. In many cases, there's no water.
Yeah.
And you build a bit of a community. And what I mean by that, you
Yeah.
set up a small town with housing,
Oh,
with
wow.
food preparation and cold food storage,
Right.
places to wash uniforms, shower trailers. So there's a lot that goes into it. And the other piece of that is the human element. Not every driver that we have would enjoy that. We have another part of our organization that they absolutely enjoy that
Right.
kind of long, intense, or it gets exhilarating to them. And to help people going through this is something that they get a lot out of, as do we. So it's an interesting business. We learn something from every event, even today. We've done many, and there's not one that happens that we don't learn something from.
So let's talk about, these are not easy operations to run. And as you identified, there's not just like different operational elements to each of these business line, but then also different personalities of people. Because like someone who's going to thrive in this high stress, intense environment may not like the day-to-day, let's just go deliver to a farm, and vice versa.
That's right.
And you're managing all these personalities and people and workflows. How are you guys thinking about workforce development, and what's your philosophy around that?
Yes, one of the things that I think our drivers understand is it's really the growth of our core business that allows us to play a bigger role in our disaster response business. Granted, while it may not be as challenging and exhilarating on the day-to-day business delivering to commercial customers, they understand that's part of what is required to build the fleet, to maintain a fleet, so that when a disaster happens, we have the assets and we have the personnel to mobilize to the event and still take great care of our core customers. I hope they understand that.
No, yeah, I think that's interesting, because it is true. Like one part of the business enables you to do other parts. I mean, I'm sure you're bringing a lot of learning back from the field on if you turn the volume up by 10x to a regular operation, what could happen. So really stress testing your regular operations and personnel, and then like bringing that back, and just because of that, you're that much robust in your day-to-day operations.
Yeah, I would say we do some efficiency testing by default during those events. You know, if it takes a dozen trucks and bobtails in a particular market to cover the customer base, and you only have 9 to do it with now during a disaster event because 3 of those trucks from that market were allocated to the disaster, the job gets done, and it gets done well. It might be putting more on night shifts, so you're slip seating trucks that maybe you originally just ran a day shift on. Also, by the way, we really like to focus on having people in other areas of the company that are qualified, that are CDL licensed, have their hazmat and have their tanker. We have several salespeople that fit that. Every dispatcher we have has a CDL, a hazmat, and a tanker. And so when necessary, we can deploy people into those critical driving roles.
It's true all hands on deck.
It's true all hands on deck.
So what's one crazy story you remember out of that business that you're like, whoa, like I never imagined this could happen?
So I'll tell you a funny one. We were delivering fuel in fuel tanks to some customers. So we had several of these tanks loaded on a trailer. We pull in, our driver goes out to deliver the tank right after the storm. He's given his address. He pulls in. It's a church. The head pastor and the congregation are out there.
Wow.
And when they saw our driver, they were just jubilant. And they said, we knew you were coming. We knew you were going to get here. And so unloaded the tank. We left, or our driver left. And about 3 days later, our customer called and said, we're still looking for that tank you were supposed to deliver.
Oh.
Our customer was NOV. This was in Louisiana. Come to find out, our driver went to the wrong location and delivered that tank to the church. And so they thought that their prayers had been answered.
Wow,
And they
that
were.
is awesome.
We left it there.
Maybe that was meant to be, right?
Maybe that was meant to be. So God works in mysterious ways. That's just kind of a funny story.
That's a great story. Yeah, like maybe their prayers were heard.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. So, one thing I've observed through our partnership is like just embracement towards technology, right? So, yeah, how have you been thinking about like the next 5 years for Moffitt, and what role does technology play in there?
Yeah. So from the time that my family was in the fuel business until the time that Rusty and I started this business, I was in the human resources outsourcing business where we rely on technology a lot. And so I try to think about this business and how to leverage some of the technology that I was accustomed to in my other industry, in my other company. And I don't know that we know all of the ways yet, but I think anytime you can get data in one central place, it can be powerful. So for example, the ability to look at the efficiency of each truck, the efficiency of each driver, the efficiency of each of our tank assets that we loan our customers. And when I say efficiency, meaning, what is the return on that investment? How many miles, how many deliveries, and how many gallons can a truck make in a day, or can a driver make in a day? And just understanding those metrics and understanding and being able to recognize the best performers, also being able to recognize those that might need help or training, or maybe they need tools of the trade that we're not providing.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be, I think that data will be powerful. And I think as an industry, we have a ways to go as an industry, and we certainly have a ways to go as a company. With Fleet Panda's help, we feel like we're making a lot of progress toward those goals of being able to measure some of that information that's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a common theme with my discussions with all our customers. It's really being able to measure what's happening, and then that's just step one, right? But there's so much work to just make sure everyone's off paper, they're fully automated, and start looking at data, because that's when the possibilities start, right? Like once you are fully automated, and really thinking about this as how do you bring all that operations together on a single platform, and if that happens, then how much efficiency can be grabbed? And we're discussing about driver shortages and trucks. It takes 6-9 months to procure trucks, and just increasing the utilization is just going to be a key part going forward.
It is, and there's never been a time where those efficiency gains are worth more than they're worth today. Trucks are more expensive than they've ever been. It's in the years I've been in the business. Drivers obviously are commanding, rightfully so, great wages. It's just saving a little bit of time per day, per unit, or per shift is more meaningful now than ever. If not now, when, right?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's probably someone or many people would build a version of Amazon for fuel delivery, where what Amazon did for retail, and really use tech first mindset to then change a lot of things that otherwise a retailer would not do. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to go there. It's like, how can technology disrupt the business model? Disrupt is a strong word, but like, how can technology help bring new solutions to the market that otherwise this pen and paper, manual, hand-to-hand combat cannot complete that, cannot get that vision. So definitely it feels like that opportunity is there. And Carl, thank you so much for being a great partner and the opportunity to serve Moffitt services.
Likewise. Thank you.